Did you just install a septic system? Did you just buy a house that has a septic system? Maybe it's your first time ever owning a home that has a septic system. Today, I want to talk to you about 5 things that you can do right now to maximize the service life of that very expensive septic system. Let's get into it. When it comes to homeownership, you have to deal with a lot of problems. Sometimes it's the water heater. Sometimes it's the well. Other times it's your septic system. If you live out in the country, you're going to have a different method of dealing with your sewage. When you have a house, you have to have a way of dealing with your wastewater, whether that's going to be through public sewer or private sewer. That's where we get into septic systems. You may be wondering, what is a septic system? Again, maybe this is your first time ever having a septic system and you're not familiar with the ins and outs. So we're gonna do a quick little 30-second breakdown of what they are. A septic system is an on-site sewage disposal system, OSDS. Very straightforward. It's meant for when you flush that toilet, the water and the solids go to a giant tank. The solids will settle out and then that liquid will go into the absorption system to get rid of the water. Generally, it'll be a tank to a drain field. There are a variety of different ones out there. Most commonly, you'll see tank to drain field. If you have an older house, you might have a slightly different setup. These systems will usually be somewhere on the opposite side of your house from your well, which is your water source. Most commonly, you'll see them with either a large green lid, large concrete lid, or a 5 to 6 inch cap right over top the front of the tank. So let's talk about these 5 things of how do you improve your septic system's life. Number 1, the biggest thing that you're gonna wanna do is make sure that you're pumping out that septic system regularly, cleaning it, getting rid of all that stuff that's in there. This is usually involved with some guy that has a pump truck coming to your house, sticking a giant hose into the tank and sucking all the juices right on out. Commonly in our area, the state recommends that you do it every 2 to 5 years, depending on family size. The reason that this matters is because those solids that settle into the tank, no matter how good your diet is, no matter how good your system is, a little bit will work its way into the drain field. The term we use for this is biomat, biologic material. It's real sticky. It's basically just your waste. As the water and the solids go into the tank from your toilet flush, the heavy stuff falls to the bottom. That's your sludge. The lighter stuff goes to the top. That's your scum, and then you have your liquid layer in the middle, the effluent. As the effluent goes out of the tank, it's gonna go down and up and through a baffle. The baffle is the device that basically prevents all of the scum, the floating stuff, from getting into the pipe and going towards the drain field. As the sludge builds up on the bottom of the system, as that water's going down and through the baffle, it's gonna actually start to scoop up those solids and start working it towards the absorption system. As it gets into the absorption system, it will mix with the soil and it will basically tar line. It'll make it to where the soil is no longer able to accept the water as efficiently. Pumping your system has been proven to increase the longevity of your absorption system. The University of Maryland has actually done a lot of work in studying this. They've attached all sorts of good critical information to their extension campus to where you can just Google it and very easily see what kind of information is out there for your specific septic system, because every system's a little bit different. In order to properly clean the tank though, the second thing that you need to make sure you have in order to keep your system working as long as it possibly can is good access. What is good access? What is good access? Good access is going to be a manhole riser on the middle of the tank. When you have your tank, you're gonna have at least 2 lids, one on the front, one on the back, but most commonly, especially with older systems back in the 90s and older, you would have 3. You'd have a small one on the front, small one in the back, and a big one in the middle. The riser would go in the big one in the middle. The purpose of the riser is so that way you can clean the tank more effectively from hitting all 4 corners versus just using the little tiny lid on the front of the tank, because most of the tanks, at least in our area, are 8 foot by 4 foot or 10 foot by 5 foot. If you're one of the Pennsylvania folk, you might actually have a circular tank. Those ones are a little bit goofy. We don't do circles over here, but usually it seems like Pennsylvania or any of the counties / towns that are close to Pennsylvania end up with circular tanks. They'll have very similar setup for the lid style, but it'll just look a little bit different. Making sure that you have good access is a minimal expense, but it can solve so many problems when it comes to cleaning your system. You'll get a lot of older pumpers who will tell you, no, I can still pump everything from the clean out on the front, the little tiny lid, but they're not right. Most of the time, if you're pumping through that little tiny lid, you're not pumping it correctly, and you're gonna run into some problems with more solids working their way to the drain field. So remember, option 1 was to clean the tank more often. Number 2 was to have better access so that we can properly pump the tank. And that leads us straight into number 3. Don't build on your septic tank. That's the third thing. What do I mean by this? For whatever reason, people like putting driveways, sheds, all sorts of weird things on top of their septic system. Yes, that means gardens too. For whatever reason, a lot of people keep putting all these things on top of their septic system that are excessive in weight. They're gonna have roots, or maybe they're gonna have it to where you can no longer get to the septic system to properly pump it. Driveways are the bane of my existence. For whatever reason, people keep putting driveways on their septic systems. This is not necessarily gonna crush your tank. It could increase the amount of weight that's on your septic system, but most of the time, the problem is that when they put the asphalt down, they either make it to where you can no longer get the lid off of the tank, whether it's a riser or the clean out, or they make it to where now, in order to properly fix something or maintain the system, now you have to cut the asphalt. So it's going to increase your cost and or make it to where you don't want to actually do the repair. I had a guy not too long ago where he had a massive gazebo put on top of his septic system. It was this big, thick 20 by 20 concrete pad. He left a little bit of the concrete where you could actually get to the lid, but the problem was his outlet baffle fell off. That's a mission critical component for your septic system. And because that baffle fell off, all the scum, the floating stuff, is getting into his drain field and easily going to start causing some problem. I told him, hey man, the only way to fix this is to tear up the concrete that you put on top of your septic system, to which he said, I don't really care, we're just going to let it do its thing. And I said, all right, well, yeah, I guess if you're going to do that, it's only a matter of time before you start running into some problems with stuff backing up towards your house. I guess just call me whenever that happens. This man elected to let his septic system fail rather than fix it. I don't know how much concrete is, but I'm pretty sure concrete's probably less than $20,000. I don't know, but that would be me to go and actually fix whatever I've got going on for my house. This leads us to our fourth condition. If you're going to be wanting to maintain your septic system properly and get the most life out of it, you have to do this one too. And that is human waste and toilet paper. That's it. You do not want to be putting flushable wipes, feminine products, plastics, cigarette butts, rubber ducks. Believe it or not, they get down there. I had a rubber duck the other day that was sitting right in front of the inlet line. It floats, it can and will catch debris. And when stuff gets caught in that sewer line, guess where it's going? Back to your house, and nobody wants that. You don't have to torture yourself with one ply. You can use normal toilet paper, but it's important to make sure that you're not putting anything that's got any kind of stretch to it. If it's a stretchy material, that can and is usually problematic. The big thing that happens with flushable wipes, Dude Wipes, or any of those other popular brands, is that it doesn't take but one to get stuck somewhere, and then it'll catch more. A lot of people, they go perfectly fine for years without ever noticing any issues until they get the one that gets stuck. All it takes is a burr or some defect in the pipe, whether it's a belly, a burr, a little bit of a root. Maybe you're putting grease down there and it got a little bit too thick and that flushable wipe got stuck. Now you got some problems. The sewer line's the most common place that people run into issues, but it can and does work its way into the drain field. Getting it out of there is way more expensive and way more time consuming. So the best thing to do is just not even give yourself the potential for something like that to happen. Human waste and toilet paper is pretty straightforward, but you're gonna be shocked that people put all sorts of goofy stuff down there. I also had one where we got called out because the homeowner kept hearing this weird gurgling sound in his sewer. Every time he flushed a toilet, it would just sound odd. Usually that means it's a ventilation issue. So we pop open the sewer line just to make sure that nothing is in there. As we're scoping, we eventually hit a blockage. We start poking the blockage with the camera. As we poke the blockage enough, blockage starts to rotate and we can see a little tiny circle. And I'm like, huh, that looks pretty familiar. So we're poking it some more. Eventually we poke this thing enough to where we can actually see the charging port. It was an iPod Nano. Somehow this thing got flushed down the toilet, and they were only about yay big, not that huge. They're small. So it somehow made its way down the toilet and it got stuck and it was catching all sorts of stuff. So once you kind of push that out of the way, guess what? The gurgling sound's all gone. They didn't have any more problems. So the lesson of this is just don't flush stuff that doesn't come out of you and is not toilet paper, which is designed to be flushed. Finally, the fifth and most important tip I can give you is to make sure that you're not letting something run continuously. A bad toilet that has a little stopper that's not keeping the water in the tank, if that thing's letting it run, guess what? That is a septic system destroyer. It may only be running for 15, 20 seconds at a time. Maybe it lets out a gallon. Maybe it's a gallon a minute. Start thinking about it real quick. If you have a toilet that's leaking for a gallon per minute, it's running continuously even. If you have a gallon per minute, that's 60 gallons in an hour. If one of you wants to go ahead and do the math below, leave a comment. Tell me, how many gallons do you think that is if for an entire 24-hour period? That's a lot of water. Whenever you have a septic system, they're going to be designed for a specific volume of water on a 24-hour cycle. Commonly, the way that we design systems, at least in our state, I would imagine it's probably similar in other states, is that we have about 100 250 gallons of water per day per bedroom. If you have a 4-bedroom house, it would be expected to have roughly 600 gallons of daily flow through the system. For those of you who looked in the comments below to see how many gallons of water a 1 gallon per minute toilet leak can cause, that's before you even start flushing other toilets, taking showers, doing laundry, dishes, cooking, any of those other high water use activities. So now you can see how it could easily swamp out a septic system very quickly. All of the failures that I've seen for new systems, anything that's less than 20 years old, is because a toilet was left on for a very long time, or for whatever reason, people keep dumping their pools on top of the septic systems. Don't do that. 20,000 gallons of water over a drain field is a terrible idea, but for whatever reason, people still do it. So it's important to make sure that you are listening for water that's flowing through your sewer line whenever you're in your utility room. It's also important to listen to the toilets when you're walking around the house. If you have a toilet that's constantly flowing, stop. Go fix it. Those flappers are like $5. They're not that expensive. That'll help to prolong the life of the system so much. So with all of that being said, these are the 5 things that I really wish people would know when they first move into their home, and hopefully you gain some value out of this. So what are these 5 things? Brief rundown. First is to make sure that you have regular cleaning of your septic system. The second is to make sure that you have good access for your septic system. The third is to make sure that you're not building on your septic system. The fourth is to make sure that you're only putting in human waste and toilet paper that's designed to go down a toilet into your septic system. The fifth is to make sure that you don't have excessive water running into your septic system, causing an overload of water for the daily flow. If you follow these 5 tips, it will help to improve the life of your septic system. I'm not just speaking from anecdotal experience. This is stuff that has been studied from the University of Maryland, Wisconsin, Indiana. There's a variety of researchers who have looked into these things to prove that those 5 tips will help make your septic system last longer. If you gained any value out of this, you know what to do. I have videos posted every day on the world of wells, septic, water, even DIY projects, home improvements, different ways to save some money. So let's talk some more tomorrow, guys. Till next time.